Hey, friends, Bethany Bravery. Welcome back to another episode of the Bringing Her Hope podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to my friend, Alli Worthington. Alli, you are a best-selling author. You are a speaker. You're a podcaster. You're a business coach. You do it all, friends. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This is so fun. We're going to have a great time.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell our viewers, our listeners, a little bit about yourself?
Well, my claim to fame is I have survived having 5 sons. I have 5 sons and a stepdaughter. My stepdaughter is grown and married. Our boys, the youngest is 14 and the oldest is 23. And people always go, wow, I can't believe you survived having all those boys. Somehow we did. We're a little battered and bruised, but we're good. So my husband and I, we live outside of Nashville with some of the boys who are still home, with a very pampered golden retriever named Ellie. And I spend my days coaching women, like you said, in life and business and writing books and just having a lot of fun on the internet. I was one of those people years ago that kind of opened up the internet and went, wait a minute, I can learn anything I want to learn, and I can build things and do whatever. I don't need to wait for permission. I could just go for it. So I kind of fell in love with the internet in those early days and hit the ground running with it, and just love building new things, love just spending my time helping women have more opportunities.
So cool. Today, we're going to kind of unpack this topic of fierce faith. I know that God has walked you through just an incredible journey. So will you take us in a little bit of that journey today?
Yeah. Well, gosh, when I think about it, kind of in the macro sense, I can think of two big things in my life. The first being back in 2008, I had just had my fifth son. He's 4 weeks old. My husband, I was a stay-home mom. My husband had lost his job almost the year before, and we were looking for a way for him to get another job, but we wanted to stay in the Nashville area. And, if you remember 2008, that's the housing crisis. So we put our house on the market and it just wouldn't sell. We're underwater. We finally get a short sale approved. We move out. We don't know where we're going next. The short sale fell through. We lost our home. We lost almost everything we owned except what fit in the 2 little pod storage unit. And we spent a couple of months living with my grandfather. And we would drive to McDonald's every day, and the kids would play in the playland, and my husband would apply for new jobs. And I would start Googling. This is when I fell in love with the internet. I'd start Googling, like, how do you build something on the internet? Now, my computer was old and it was crazy. And in those days, I was like, oh, you can build a ministry or you can build a business, whatever you want to build. This is 2008. And my husband, God led us to him getting another job in the Nashville area. And that kind of set me on this mission of, how can I not only build something that will help provide for the family, but to help other women? And we really had so much redemption in that situation from the Lord, because we were over leveraged in our house before everything happened. And I remember we were laying in bed one night at my grandfather's house, and we just held hands and we prayed and we said, Lord, we obviously need to do adult supervision.
I love that.
We need you to get us through this situation. Guide us. Don't, Proverbs 3:5, don't let us lead on our own wisdom and understanding. Let us rely on you. And he really took us on a journey of not only bringing us a new job and, having somewhere to live, but also changing the way we went about things to make sure we didn't make decisions without him. And, that was what we needed to bring him into our lives in a bigger and deeper way than we ever had before. So that definitely comes to mind with redemption. And another one, if you fast forward 5 years from that, 5 years, everything's great. My husband loves his job. I love what I'm building. And then out of the blue, he gets a cold. He gets a virus and illness. And we spent 3.5 years with him very, very, very sick. Doctors weren't sure what was going on. We finally got a diagnosis, but there were many times where we were rushing him to the ER and not sure if he was going to make it. And in the darkest days, God spoke to us so clearly that he was with us, that he isn't abandoning us. He is going to redeem the situation. And I kid you not, as soon as it came on, it lifted. After all of those years of us going, Lord, please, take this away, praying for healing, sometimes giving up that healing could even happen.
Yeah.
And then like that, he redeems the situation. So we've seen his hand moving over and over in our lives and getting ourselves in situations that, we didn't know how we were going to get out of. And then, things just happening to us that we don't know if he's ever going to get healed, if we're ever going to see God move in the way that we want God to move. Because sometimes we want God to move in a way that God's like, that's not good for you, right?
Yep.
And, we're at a season now with what's going on, sometimes globally, with so much illness after the pandemic and so many people suffering and so many people have lost people that they love, that this issue of God being with us in the illness and God strengthening us through an illness and God strengthening people who are caregivers.
Yeah.
Because, maybe it's not pandemic related. Maybe a woman is listening now and she's a caregiver to her husband, or she's a caregiver to her parents, or a caregiver to a child. And it's a special role for women. There's blessing in it. There's joy in it, but it's really, really hard. And it's something that sometimes people don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
Is that fatigue that caregivers go through. And I hope that my story can serve as a reminder that God doesn't abandon his daughters. God is with us in this. He will strengthen us. He has a plan, and we aren't left on our own.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the woman who's maybe in the middle of what you're talking about right now, where she can't see whether healing's coming. She can't see whether the job is going to open. What would you say to her?
I would say that the Lord has a plan, that it can seem scary and terrifying. But if you look back on your long history with the Lord, you can look back time after time after time that he came through. For me, it's time after time after time that I was like, Lord, I know what you should do. You should do this thing right here. He did not. He had a better plan. Like quoting Garth Brooks, thank God for unanswered prayers, right? He knew exactly what should happen. He made sure everything was lined up perfectly so his will would happen. And it's only when we look back on it where we go, oh, you really were with me in that. You really did have a plan. And, to be honest, sometimes we get frustrated with him. Sometimes we get mad, right? But when we look back on our history with him, it can help us trust him in the moment because we can see that he's come through over and over and over again. And then we hold fast to the truth that he doesn't abandon us. He doesn't turn his back on us. He doesn't all of a sudden get tired of us or our bad attitudes sometimes, or get mad at us because we're afraid. He knows we're human. For those of us who have ever loved little children, whether we're mothers or aunts, whatever, we know when that little 2-year-old is, raising its little fist at us and angry, that 2-year-old needs a snack and a nap and to be comforted and to be loved. And as soon as that mood is over, that little 2-year-old's going to be sweet and wonderful and everything's great. We don't all of a sudden go, look at that terrible attitude the 2-year-old has. I do not love them anymore. I'm not going to take care of them. My plans for their lives, no more. And that's the way God is with us. And for me, when I learned to really think about it in that way, as God is a loving father, and sometimes I'm just an out of control toddler. And he's like, I love you. I have great plans for you. I know you're scared, you're tired, you're afraid. Stay with me.
Yeah.
We're going to work through this. So that would be my encouragement.
I love that because he can handle the wrestle. And I think oftentimes our relationship with him becomes more intimate when we're like, hey, you're already thinking this. We're already wrestling with this. Why don't we share it with you and invite you into this? I love that.
Yeah, he knows what we're thinking. He knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the first story that you were kind of talking about with redemption, to where you just started Googling, you started figuring out what that looked like. I'm thinking there are women here that maybe God's placed something on their heart to write a book or to become a speaker or whatever that looks like. And they're thinking, girl, how did you even have the courage to start Googling or start dreaming or looking into something outside of the box? What would you say to them?
Well, I'll say that with God and Google, we are unstoppable. Like,
Love it.
God will give us ideas, He'll give us vision, but Google will kind of give us the brass tacks of like, here's how to actually get it done. For me, I had to keep pushing forward because I knew my calling in that season. I wanted to stay a stay-home mom. I wanted to be able to stay home with my kids, but I also needed to help us out financially. I wanted to make sure no matter what happened in the future, if we got in a situation like that again, I could help.
Yeah.
So what happens so often is sometimes women have the feeling that if they follow a dream or an idea, that it will be selfish and it will hurt their family.
Yep.
And my response to that is, if God has given you this dream, then it's not going to hurt your family. And they go, well, how do I know if it's my dream or God's dream for me? And the answer to that is way easier than we can imagine. Because if it's a dream that's God given, He's going to keep reminding us. We're going to be sitting in church and we're going to think about it, right? He's going to send people to kind of give us little tips, and it's going to benefit the people that we love, and it's going to benefit this earth that we walk on. Whether we have a dream to be a mailman or to write a book or to go back to school and be an accountant, whatever it is. Now, how do we know if it's a dream God hasn't given us? If it's selfish, it's probably a dream that's going to hurt people.
Yeah.
If you have a dream that you're like, oh, it's my dream, but it's definitely going to hurt these 5 people, and it's not going to help people get closer to living the life that God's called them to live, well, that's probably a selfish dream. Like, if I said to you, I had this great dream, I know what the next step in my life is. You said, great, Alli, what is it? And I said, I'm going to start robbing banks.
Yes.
You'd say, I think you need to pray a little bit about that dream. But if I said, my next dream is to write a book on motherhood, that's secretly what I'm writing in the background. Well, that doesn't hurt anybody, but it can actually help people. So I think sometimes we overthink it and we hold ourselves back because we go, oh, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if it's selfish. But meanwhile, like, God's whispering in our heart, I want you to do this, whether it's, write a book or start a Bible study or do all of these different things that God could want us to do, or learn French cooking, whatever it is. God cares about the little things, and He is continually, whether we're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, He's continually giving us kind of a new adventure to unwrap in life. Yeah. We just need to be open to it.
That is so cool. So we've gotten to the place where there's this dream. We're embracing that. Okay, I think this is a God dream. Now, what is that like one next step? I think we can be paralyzed by fear when we see the whole big picture. I have to create this whole ministry, or I've got to write all this book, even though it takes one sentence at a time. What would you say, like, my next piece of advice is take that dream, and then what's that one next step that you can do?
Well, the thing about Google is Google can be overwhelming. Yeah. And there's good information and there's bad information on Google. So I would find a good mentor.
That's good.
Whatever it is, whatever that dream entails, finding maybe it's an older woman in your church who can help you learn how to teach the Bible. Maybe it is a group that can help you learn how to write your first book. Maybe it's a coach that can help you get to the next level in some way. Whatever that is, it's really important to get people coming along beside you who are just a few steps in front of you, who can go, don't worry, I've done what you want to do, or I've been where you've been. Let me show you the steps. Because the thing is, when God gives us a dream or gives us a vision, and He wants to redeem an area of our life or redeem something in the world that He wants us to work on, we will have that vision, but other people won't have that vision. So I could very clearly tell you, your next calling is to be a zookeeper. It comes to mind because I was a zookeeper in college. I want you to work with penguins. Yeah, I want you to work with penguins. And He could mean it. And like, that's your next thing. It'd be a surprise to you. Yeah. And you could tell other people around you and go, I think I'm going to work with penguins. And they'd be like, that's crazy. I don't see that for you. Well, of course they don't see it for you because God hasn't told them that's your next thing. And for me, when I was building a ministry and a business online, the other moms at school didn't get it. Yeah. And they couldn't see me doing it because that vision wasn't given to them. So it was really important for me to kind of find friends, and it wasn't friends locally. It was friends in different, writing communities or things like that. Friends who go, you know what, God's given me that same dream. Let's let's help each other out. Let's help each other, let's promote each other. Let's learn tips from each other. That's so valuable, whatever it is, because sometimes if we go, well, if my best friend doesn't get it, or the other moms at school don't get it, maybe I'm not supposed to do it, but it's not for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has your life changed since you said yes to the dream that the Lord placed on your heart?
Oh, it's wonderful and sometimes awful. I mean, the thing is, like, even though I have built what God put on my heart to build, there's still these seasons of just heartache, like with what my husband went through.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important for us as women, as we're building, as we're going through hard seasons, as we're trusting the Lord to redeem whatever difficult situation we have in life, to continually stay close to him.
Yep.
To continually, like you mentioned, tell him what's on our heart, because he knows anyway, to lean into him and constantly invite him in all the situations. Because I'll tell you, if somebody told me 15 years ago that I would be doing everything I'm doing now, I would have laughed, because I would be like, I'm not that girl. That doesn't make sense. But God is just a great partner on the journey. And I think sometimes when we go through difficult situations, sometimes we take it as a sign that we're not supposed to do what we're doing. As if when we're in God's will, with our family, with our work, whatever it is, if we're in God's will, everything's going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
And I have to relearn that lesson all the time, that just because something is hard, just because I'm waiting for the Lord to step in and change the story that I'm living, doesn't mean I'm necessarily doing anything wrong. It just means I'm alive on planet Earth. I mean, sometimes when you go through something so terrible, like what we went through with my husband being so sick for so long, it's easy to look at that situation and go, well, I know, Matt, God's not mad at us. God's not punishing us by making him so sick. We live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we go through things that maybe aren't quite as traumatic, but they're difficult, we will tell ourselves the story that, oh, this wasn't right for me. Things are hard right now because I'm not supposed to be doing this. When really we're just alive on earth, and it's all messy.
That's so good. So important to pay attention to the story that we tell ourselves. I love that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Alli, you are just a gift, friend. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for just sharing a little bit of your time and what God has walked you through. And I know our listeners are going to want to connect with you. So how can they do that?
I'm alliworthington.com on my website, and of course, Instagram. And you can listen to me on the Alli Worthington Show. That's my podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again for your transparency, and you're just giving us a few minutes of your coaching experience as well. We appreciate you, friend.
Thanks so much. This was great.
Absolutely.